Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I'm going to share with you a very troubling and terrifying subscriber's submission. Before we get into this upload, though, a couple links I'd like to share. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. All of those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version. Written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Is available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those books are in the description as well. Last, but not least, today's upload is dedicated to my dad, who is in the hospital and within the last 2 days has had 2 surgeries. This one's to you, Pops. Now, I've taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Hey Jeff, you asked me to send you my story, so here it is. My profile is G-Man Believes on YouTube. This happened on November 9th, 2016. I was sitting in my front media room watching something on YouTube. It was around 7:40 p.m. in the evening. My wife had just taken our 2 dogs out into the backyard. The backyard is fenced in, but we have a pool in the entrance to the backyard has an 8-inch gap between the deck and the gate, due to the pool deck entrance being higher. So we have lots of rabbits that come into the backyard and burrow under the shrubs inside the backyard. And my neighbor lets his cats come out, and they know exactly where to find the rabbits. So you can probably figure out that it makes for a series of ongoing chaos trying to keep my dogs from going after the rabbits or the cats. Anyway, my wife starts yelling my name over and over again. And I, of course, thinking I'm going to have to break up a fight between my dogs, a cat, or stop my dogs from killing a rabbit, or chasing one into the pool. So I ran outside freaking out, and I don't see my wife trying to break up a fight or stop them from chasing a rabbit. Instead, I see my wife looking up to the left at my neighbor's house. So let me lay out my neighborhood real quick in order to get an idea of what I'm talking about. It's so bizarre. At least it is to me. I live in Allen, Texas, not out in the middle of nowhere, but a densely populated area, and my neighborhood is slightly upper middle class. Most of the neighborhood has 2-story homes. Ironically, my home is a single-story home, sitting between 2 two-story homes. Now, we do have fields and parks surrounding most of the neighborhoods. So now that I gave you a quick description of my surroundings, I'll continue with what my wife was looking at. So, I looked to my neighbor's home, which at first I thought my wife was looking at some animal on my neighbor's roof, but nope. About 30 feet above my neighbor's house is a UFO. It is a cylinder shape with 5 appendages sticking out of what I think is the base of the craft. The craft is about 15 to 20 feet in length and 10 to 12 feet in width. Looks like it's on fire, shifting from bright orange to dark orange and red. To be more accurate, it looked more like it was phasing, which is why I believe it looked like it was changing colors or on fire. You know how you always look at pictures or videos of UFOs and they always look blurry? Well, I think that's why people can't get a clear picture or video, due to this type of phasing going on. So I start to yell to my daughter to grab my video camera, because this would have probably been the closest I or anyone would have had to record a UFO. But I guess this UFO detected our voices, or saw my wife and I, and it started to raise up and move away. Meanwhile, my daughter brings out my video camera, which is a Sony Handycam DVD, which, if anyone has ever owned one, knows it doesn't exactly have the fastest boot up on startup. So I'm impatiently waiting for my camera to boot up, and the UFO is slowly flying away. I ran into the house and grabbed my Windows 10 phone, which I owned at the time, and it didn't have the best camera in the world. But I wasn't one to have a phone to take pictures or videos, just to make phone calls. I managed to get a couple of pictures of the UFO, as it was at the end of my alley in the neighborhood. And right at that time, my camera finally decides to say ready and grab about 3 seconds of video in night vision. Well, you would have thought it was over, and my wife said, "Well, that was cool," and proceeded to go inside. My daughter and I are still watching this UFO, and make the quick decision to go after it in hopes of getting a better shot. So I grabbed my wife's car keys, since they were closest, and proceed to chase the UFO through 3 towns. I had to take a public street to obey the traffic laws, whereas the UFO didn't. Needless to say, I never caught up to it, but had an interesting story to tell to my friends and family. Well, a few days go by, and Saturday comes along, and I take my daughter to the mall. We get back a few hours later, around 1:30 in the afternoon, and my wife is in the room looking like death warmed over her. She was fine when we left only a few hours earlier. Well, I'm obviously very concerned and ask her what's wrong. She tells me she took the dogs out in the backyard, and she was in the yard near the right side neighbor's 2-story house, and she looks up because she thought she saw a flock of geese flying over. You know, that V pattern they fly in. Well, she said once she looked up, she quickly realized it was not a flock of geese, but, as she put it, a grayish-silver-looking triangle craft. And she said she only saw the front nose of it before it completely vanished right in front of her. She grabbed the dogs and went directly inside, and within a half an hour, she started feeling really sick, so she lied down. I mean, she was white as a ghost. She stayed sick for weeks, which is highly unusual for my wife. Nothing she took was really helping. My wife is probably one of the strongest people I've ever known. She used to do barrel racing and raised longhorns, horses, and other livestock, part of her family's business. Yes, I know, it sounds like the typical stereotype Texas redneck lifestyle, but my wife was anything but a cowgirl. I guess that's the correct label or stereotype. She was just raised that way due to her family living on a ranch. She's probably one of the strongest people I've ever known. She's only 5 feet tall and has more medical issues than most people in their lives, so when she gets sick, it's usually pretty bad. We try to live a healthy lifestyle and work out regularly and eat only plant-based, so it's really started to concern me. So after a few weeks, she started to recover. Now during this time, I would go outside at different times of night and take my video camera out just in case. Well, I actually managed to videotape another UFO directly behind my house. Now, when they say UFOs can change shape, that's true. At least from what I've witnessed. This UFO actually looked like a water tower. Sounds unbelievable, I know. The only problem was that there was no water towers directly behind my house, and plus, water towers don't hover in the air and tilt 40 degrees to one side. So I video recorded this UFO for about 30 minutes. It's 27 degrees outside at the time, and I was really starting to freeze. Anyway, after this, I decided to go on MUFON site and send in what we saw. Within days, I get a phone call from what I thought was MUFON investigator. At least he claimed to be, and said he saw my report online and would love to come out and speak to my family and myself about our sightings. We set up an appointed time during the week, and he came out. We went over what my family had seen, and I showed him the pictures and video I had taken. He then said that there had been several people in my area reporting UFOs, also, which I thought was pretty cool, considering you usually only hear about people having sightings of UFOs in the country, rural areas, or out in the desert, and very rarely groups of people witnessing them around the same time or in the same area. He then asked if he could have the pictures and video I had. I told him he couldn't have my originals or the video, but I'd be more than happy to make him some copies and send it to him. He didn't seem very happy about that at the time, which I thought was a little odd, but didn't give it much thought. So he agrees, and then he says if myself or my family have any more sightings, to please give him a call, which I did, but he would never return any of my calls afterward. About another week and a half go by, and I go out front to get the daily mail drop. It's about 5:25 p.m., and I get the mail out front, and then I hear it. And I kid you not, it's a Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter flying only 75 feet above me. I'm quite familiar with military aircraft since I've been around them all my life. Plus, this one was all blacked. A little unusual for flying around in the city. Anyway, this Black Hawk then stops and hovers right in front of me. Again, I live in the city in a very large neighborhood. So, it's not like this seemed very random to me, especially since we seemed to be staring each other down. After about a couple of minutes, I guess the pilot figured out I wasn't going anywhere since I continued to stare back at him, and finally decided to fly off. I could swear the pilot gave me a wave before leaving. So I go and tell my wife what happened. She said she thought that helicopter seemed really close, and said that was really weird. I agreed with her, of course. So again, I call this guy I think works for MUFON, and leave a message and tell him what had just happened, because this kind of stuff just doesn't happen to me or my family. And of course, no return call. Also, let me add that there are no military bases in my area. The closest one used to be in Grand Prairie, Texas, which closed down a few years ago. So, where this UH-60 Black Hawk come from is beyond me. So after that, for about 4 to 6 months, I get a flyover directly over my house between 2:30 and 3 in the morning. Again, they fly as low as possible. My wife and I had no idea who to call. It's not like we could call the local police and complain about Black Hawk helicopters flying over my house, and could you please tell them to stop harassing my family with flyovers every night? So during this time, I'm starting to stay up later and later because I want to catch these bozos in the act. Not that I could really do anything anyway. Also, out of habit, when I go into the kitchen, I always look out the front window and check on my neighbors' cars to make sure no one is coming into our neighborhood and vandalizing any of the cars or houses. This has happened a few times in the past. So I'm looking outside, and lo and behold, walks by the biggest, what I thought was a coyote or even a wolf. Now, we do have coyotes around, and they will on a rare occasion come into our neighborhood. But this, whatever it was, walks right in front and stops at my mailbox. Now my mailbox stands about 4.5 feet tall, or 53 inches tall, from the base of the street to the top. My mailbox is bricked, so it's a little higher than most. Anyway, this coyote, wolf, or whatever, walked from the left side of my street, completely ignoring the other neighbors' mailboxes or homes, and it walks and stops right in front of my mailbox. Now, it's on all fours, and its back is even with the top of my mailbox. At the time, I had never read stories about cryptids other than stories about Sasquatch. Now, I heard that coyotes and wolves would be known to interbreed together, and you would get a cross between the two, but I've never heard or saw anything this big. It was gray with coarse-looking fur, and very wide body, and very long. Never ever saw a coyote or a wolf that wide. Now, I later on heard about what they refer to as Dogman, which, from the description, matched exactly what I saw. I used to own a shepherd wolf, and she was bigger than most shepherds, lanky and pretty big, but not anywhere near this size. Also, when it got in front of my mailbox, which is in front of my kitchen window, directly facing, this creature looked up and stared directly at me. I don't know if it knew I was staring at it, or just looked up to see if it could see in the house or looking for a small animal. But when it did, it stood there and just stared at me for about, 15 to 20 seconds. I saw a little of its teeth and its eye shine, but there really wasn't any direct light for there to be any eye shine. Just this gold of little reddish eye shine, which I also thought was very odd. I mean, it moved its head a little and the color changed to that reddish color, but could have been just me. But I did think the eye shine was odd, considering there was no direct light on the eyes. There was a street lamp on the corner, but it was behind the animal. Anyway, after it gave me a stare down, it walked off like nothing happened. I watched it walk to the corner of my street, and walked right down the other street. And that was it. Now, what does this have to do with everything that has been going on so far? I don't know. But with everything else going on during that time, it seemed really odd. Whatever creature, wolf or mutated coyote, whatever it was that just walked in front of my house, and I have never been one to believe in coincidences, but I never go outside late at night anymore to get the mail or open my garage door and work in my garage without keeping or carrying a weapon on my person or near me in the garage. That's just how nervous that creature made me, and I've never been bothered or scared of animals. So anyway, flyovers continue. About 6 months late, my daughter and I go outside and we're going to do our usual walk around the neighborhood. I look up and see 13 military transports flying over going west. I tell my daughter to look up and watch because, again, we don't have any military bases around my area, and also these transports are not flying in a regular civilian flight pattern for aircraft. But then again, these are military and not civilian aircraft. So we're watching them, and then all of a sudden one transport turns north, the next one turns south, the next continue to go west, and this pattern continues till the last one. So after that, I get no more flyovers at night, and everything goes back to normal. At least, I thought it was. A few weeks later, I get a call from MUFON investigator apologizing for taking so long to get back to me. Gives me his name and starts to ask me questions. I then proceed to tell him that I've already had a MUFON investigator come out and talk to me. And I showed him my pictures and videos. And then told him everything that transpired, leaving out the oversized mutated coyote or wolf thing I saw. He then proceeds to ask me for another investigator's name, which I gave him. He then proceeds to tell me, and I quote, "I have never heard of this person, and there is only one other person besides myself that investigates your area." I asked him who else has access to your files besides MUFON. He said it should be no one else. I said, well, you should find out, and I would like to know who came to my home and why my family got harassed for months with flyovers from the military helicopters. Was it because I didn't give my original photos and videos to this guy? I guess I'll never know. Now, there are more details I'm leaving out of this because, to be honest, I just don't know who would believe it. I find it hard to believe, and my wife and I went through it, but that covers the Dogman and the majority of what happened to us during this time. Wow, holy crap. All I have to say is this, like I said, was troubling and terrifying. If I didn't know any better, I'd say the U.S. government is willing to do anything in their power, including use Dogman or Werewolf to scare civilians into keeping their mouths closed about the UFOs or cryptids or whatever. It's crazy. This gentleman was nice enough to leave his phone number attached to the email, which I emailed him back and asked if we could talk and if he'd be up for a possible interview. I'm thinking that we may be able to have an interview with this gentleman. Wow. I mean, wow. And, of course, you know, I'm going to ask the question, can I see some pictures, please? Which hopefully he'll share. This, right now, I'm thinking of one person and one person only to call. So, and I know you guys know who I'm talking about, and I know damn well that most of you were thinking the same thing that I was thinking when I was reading this. I'm a little perturbed. This poor guy and his family. I mean, geez, I'm crow. Anyway, thank you guys for always supporting the channel. Thank you for just making the channel. You guys are what makes this channel. So, thank you. And, with that, I'm going to bid y'all farewell. And see you tomorrow. Have a great night, guys.